Hi, everyone. Hi. My name is Diogenes Brito, or Diogenes Brito, if you want to pronounce it the way my mother intended. Most folks call me Dio, and I'm a designer and an engineer. I say engineer because I studied product design at school. That's a mechanical engineering degree, so physical product design, as well as some software engineering. And I've been paid to do that from time to time. And I say designer because I've been a professional designer for over 6 years now, doing digital interface design. At Squarespace, I was a design engineer, so I did development and UI design. At LinkedIn, I was a user experience designer. At Slack, my title is product designer, but really it's the same digital interface design stuff. So that's my street cred, out of the way. But I'll tell you a little story. Some time ago, a romantic relationship that I was in ended unexpectedly. I know. And this was a long-term, stable-seeming thing that kind of crumbled all of a sudden. And as a result, I was thinking, wow, I really got to, understand what happened with this whole thing. I kind of, as a designer, I naturally started to apply the design process to my romantic life. What happened here? So I started to dig into it and read like all these books. I wanted to kind of book binge about anything I thought was related. Relationships, conversational style, feedback, difficult conversations, cross-cultural communications, this, that, and the other. Now, this particular subset of books really cracked things open for me, at work, actually, because I had a sort of aha moment. I could see all these times where, me and her, we had been talking to each other, but talking past each other, not actually communicating. And it was like taking the red pill. Like I could see the Matrix at work, all right? I could see all these times where two people were talking to each other, but they weren't actually exchanging meaning and information, where they had the same facts, but they were coming up, with different conclusions because of their conversational style or because of their different perspectives or lenses. And this got me really thinking about the way in which designers communicate at work and how I communicate with other people at work. And then shortly thereafter, not too long after this whole, new understanding about communication came along, my manager came to me during a one-on-one. She said that my product manager had said that I hadn't done something I said I would do, that I said I would complete this design, and I ended up not doing it. And I said, hold on a second, definitely not. I know this is not true, but with my newfound knowledge, I knew that this was probably a conversational style problem, that we had failed to communicate. Because this is a good guy, he's trying to be honest, I'm trying to be honest, we both think we're telling the truth. So what had happened? I discovered, after I sat down with him and we kind of dug into that interaction a bit, that he's more of an indirect communicator, that I try to speak a little bit more literally, using the message content to deliver meaning more than the meta message, the sort of read between the lines kind of form, and he's a little bit more on the other side. He had said something like, it would be nice if we could X. It would be really nice if we, did this design thing. And I respond, and he was thinking, you should do it. I would like you to do it. And he's not my boss. I don't report to him. We're sort of, on very even keel, equal playing field. So he didn't want to just command me to do it, right? Very sensible. And me, on the other hand, I respond, yes, it would be nice, thinking, yeah, but too bad that's not going to happen. I'm literally thinking the answer, yes, it would be nice, and he hears, yes, I'm going to do it. So this is one of those times that we just totally, missed each other. And this is representative of, how much the specifics and mechanics around communication affect getting good teamwork done. Because in the end, it doesn't really matter whether one of us was in the right or the wrong. And the conversational styles aren't good or bad. They're just different. And it's important to sort of navigate them to understand, how to work better together. So the design didn't get done. That was the final thing that happened. And if you think about what a designer does, you can say that a designer does planning, that they make these artifacts to try to, candidate solutions to see what we should do, how we should do it, and then the team can build off of them. Bruno Munari said, a designer is a planner with an aesthetic sense. Nice. I like that. But too bad, the plan isn't really important, right? What matters is actually what makes it out the door. The final output, the final result is what's important. And that's where the communication piece comes in. Because as a designer, it's not about what you meant, right? It's about what they understood. If you've heard Kim Scott's radical candor trademark talk, you've heard a phrase like, it's communication, it's not measured at the speaker's mouth, it's measured at the listener's ear. So, you've got to, as a designer, get all of your team on the same page, heading in the same direction, bought in, understanding what's happening and why, so that they can make the good decisions they need to make along the way to get to a good final output, or to execute on the plan with as high a fidelity as possible. And effective communication, this doing this mechanical, logistical communication part well, lets you essentially lead without being in charge. Because if you think about what I mentioned, getting everyone on the same page, having people understand where they're going, why, that's leadership. And good communication lets you do that without actually being in charge, which is rarely the case as a designer, unfortunately. So you don't have authority, so you've got to build influence with the team a little bit. So this is you. This is our likable hero. You are a professional designer. And sorry, I'm talking mostly to designers during this talk, but PMs, imagine. Well, actually, can I see the designers raise their hands just so I get an idea what we... Oh, pretty good, pretty good. All right, good coverage. So you're a designer, and you're here. You're going to design or die trying. You're going to get your stuff done because you said you were going to do it, and you will. How? Well, let's set the bar here. What can you do probably as a designer if you got hired? You can probably artfully arrange some pixels in a rectangle, different colors, specific arrangements, glowing screens. Maybe you can animate them a little bit to look like other stuff. That's pretty cool. And you have some creative process for figuring out what arrangement exactly. That's probably the sort of minimum bar of entry where you can say, oh yeah, that person's a designer. Now, why should someone like that be more important than, say, the plumber who fixes the toilets at your job? Because, newsflash, toilets, super important, and when they don't work, a lot of things don't go well at your company. So if you're a designer, why should you be, how can you deliver a little bit more value? I think you can think of it like this, the way Julie Jo says it. Being a designer is like having a superpower that allows you to show people the future. And this, I think, is the essence of what you're going to be doing with your hard skill set that I just mentioned, your little creative process and your pixel arranging, to really generate real value for the team, to be invited to the table, right? And I'll define being at the table because I don't want you to get the wrong idea. So we'll say that someone has a seat at the table when they're able to influence a business's high-level decision-making to ensure the business succeeds. Cool, right? So because you're there, the business makes better decisions. But how? You can think of it like this. This is actually a really cool graphic from useronboard.com. And the idea is that, hey, your company's not selling your product. It's selling what a person can become with the product, the final output, right? The thing that, the thing they'll be able to do. And you can think of the true value of a designer in the same way. You take a normal team just going along about their business, you add a designer, boom, super team, all right? Now, designers can empower their teams to make better decisions faster, right? That's how they can use this skill set of being able to show people possibilities to help them make better decisions faster. And I think they can do this by functioning in 3 primary roles. Now, these are roles I think a professional designer can take. And just like everyone at a company tends to be in the role of designer from time to time, I think as a professional designer, you can assume these 3 specific roles, and by doing so, you can sort of be invited to the table, generate that level of value for your team. All right? And you're uniquely suited to do so, and you're in a place where you can make these things your primary concern. So, the 3 roles, being a facilitator. Designers are facilitators, assisting others in refining and transmitting their ideas. They're stewards, in the sense of supporting and protecting empathy in the creative process, and they're connoisseurs. They maintain a high bar of quality, and I'll talk about what I mean by quality in a bit. So, facilitation, what it is. Well, by facilitation, I'm talking about things like helping your team communicate by making ideas tangible. You're helping your team have conversations about what could be, what should be. And when notice I'm saying ideas, I don't mean your ideas. I mean ideas in general. So because there are probably more people on the team that are not you than are, the proportion should be similar, right? You should be actually spending most of your time executing on other people's ideas, making them come to life, bringing a level of specificity to them. And along that same vein, you're clarifying and you're specifying goals, right? So you're getting everyone on the same page so they can understand what the deal is, why they're doing anything. And then, of course, you can check for understanding. By getting things out of people's head and into a real artifact, you can be like, hey, is this what you meant exactly? People go round and round in circles in meetings talking about what they mean. You go, you make a prototype, you come back. Do you mean this? This is good because of X, Y. It's bad because of X, Y, Z. So designers can be the intermediary between information and understanding, is how Hans Hofmann would put it, who was actually a painter. So an example. I was a designer on the Slack app directory, and it started as 70, just a list of 70 integrations that we had made, and we had to take it to a directory where you could find, where anyone could submit their app, and you could find hundreds, maybe thousands of apps, right? And after we had gone through the entire design process, I had to go back and make something like this because I understood that the engineers weren't totally 100% on what the transition plan was going to be. So this is a sort of a sitemap showing what are the new pages, what are the old pages, which ones are behind authentication, which ones require login, which ones don't, how do they all stitch together. I've made things like this. This is a set of, part of a set of low fidelity kind of wireframe flow diagrams that I made specifically just to help engineers talk about implementation. This was before really going deep into design, and it ended up being a very useful thing, obviously, for figuring out the actual user flow. But this was not about, getting it right. It was about laying out a picture so that they could use to talk about it. And there was a lot of iterations and versions of this that would keep building in what they had learned and the constraints that they discovered. And lastly, some examples of these wireframes I've made are for an upcoming interface I won't discuss, but they were about how trying to figure out what all the places were that we could insert this UI. Where could it be? What are all the entry points? And designers, we have a lot of good jargon, basically, a lot of dedicated vocabulary to describe some of these things, modal, popover, fly out, whatever it is, but no one else knows what that means. So you get it out, you put it down, and you say, hey, we could do something like this, trade-offs, we could do something like that. So facilitation, making ideas tangible, clarifying goals, checking for understanding. The next primary role, stewardship. Now, I mentioned that designers have this creative process that they know about. Well, it's up to you, to promote that process and give it to other people, help them use it to solve their own problems, right? Because, there's at some point in lower school, people decide you either can draw or you can't, or like you're good at math or you're not, and then half of the people get creativity and half of the people don't. So you kind of have to spread this around in the working world so that people can have the tools to solve complicated problems. You also know, as a person very familiar with the creative process, figuring out how to arrange those pixels, that ideas, are gross before they really come to life. They're something really valuable, a core nugget of value can be hidden in just a pile of garbage presentation. And you have to kind of shepherd these ideas, these diamonds in the rough, through to execution. And then I think an important part of a creative process is a sort of user-centered, kind of empathetic perspective. I mentioned before that I was a designer on the app directory. This is a screenshot of it at launch. And before it was this, it was about, this is just a small subset of all the iterations. It was about a dozen other things and more. And you see that these don't look great. Type's not just figured out, right? We don't know what the names of things are. Are there going to be categories? What's the message? Is there going to be search? What's the navigation? All of these things we're trying to figure out at the same time. And we know we got to push through this phase to really get at what is really valuable. And in fact, I ended up taking ideas from these explorations, recreating them in low fidelity to have conversations about whether, how this thing could exist, to talk about it very specifically, or to kind of, lower the fidelity and talk about it in the abstract. I prefer the kind of IDEO style process where you immerse yourself in the user story first, but at Slack, we kind of arrange it roughly in two large phases where we're diverging and converging around first the problem to figure out what we're doing, and then the solution. This is, I think, trademarked double diamond method by the UK Council, but it really doesn't matter what you do as long as you have a creative process, because it's really different for every project and at every company. So stewardship, protect those nascent ideas, promote the creative process, spread the user perspective. The last bit, connoisseurship. I think, being a connoisseur, every designer's favorite thing. Look at that poster. It's so ugly. Look at this thing. It's beautiful. Oh, that thing sucks. Design. This is really, being a connoisseur is about being an arbiter of taste. And there is a quality to this that is subjective, right? But you can work with the other designers on your team or just yourself to elevate the taste of the rest of the team. Show them what's good and what's bad and why, and have good reasons. It looks good is probably not one. Hold the quality line. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about this in a second, but as you're at the interface between the user and the product, you kind of have to be sure to set that threshold for, is this valuable enough? Is this good quality enough to represent us? Are we as a team proud of this? And of course, knowing the medium. Every good designer knows, their kind of where the medium in which they work. Maybe it's what other kind of UI components can function the same way, similar interfaces in other products, print media, whatever it is. Now, to talk a little bit more about quality, you're thinking, okay, as a connoisseur, I'm trying to decide what is the best design. What's the best design? Well, to figure that out, you have to figure out what does best even mean. And that's kind of tough. Seems very subjective. I think these are the best shoes. I like them a lot. These are my favorite ice creams by Pharrell. They've got little rolled up dollar bills on them. And you'd think by now we'd have figured out shoes. There should be a best design, right, for shoes. We have all this technology. But this is just what I found when I searched for ice cream shoes. There's a very, very limited slice of all of the shoe kind of world out there, right? So there is a piece of this that's subjective. But I think the part that isn't as much is the fact that good design, the best designs, are of high quality. And quality is about whether every detail has been considered. Whether there is a perspective on why make every single choice. So quality is one of those things, I know it when I see it, but I think the core of it that anyone can agree on, beyond the subjective taste bits, is the fact that all the details are considered, and the decisions are made, with a point of view, with a perspective. So, acting in this role of connoisseur, elevating your team's taste, holding that quality line, and knowing the medium. So, to recap a little bit. Designers should be facilitators, assisting others in refining and transmitting ideas, everyone's ideas. Stewards promoting and protecting the creative process, and connoisseurs, maintaining a high bar of quality. Now, I think if you're functioning in these three primary roles, you get to really, be at the table. You are a valuable addition to the team, making it a super team, making it, helping the team make better decisions faster. You do this stuff, and you don't have to be, try to break down the door to get invited to the table. Instead, you'll be asked to join. But back to this little communication piece, the kind of mechanics, the logistics of functioning in these three roles is about communicating, interpersonally, digitally, with your teammates effectively. So, just a little Slack context about my time there. Slack is a messaging tool for teams. We're using it here for a slightly different purpose, but it's a messaging tool for teams, and it's actually the fastest growing workplace software ever. When I started, it was about 40 people. It's been less than 3 years. It's now over 800 people. I think it might be close to 900. This number is a few months old. I say that not because, yay, Slack, but because it's been it's banana town inside, all right? Things are changing all the time, and it's a new company every 3 weeks, okay? Because as soon as you figure out a process that works for 4 people, surprise, you have 10 people. So, to give you an idea, at Squarespace, I worked with 0 product managers because they didn't have any. That responsibility was spread between the designer for a feature, the engineer, and the CEO. At LinkedIn, I worked on a couple of projects and had a total of 2. At Slack, so far, I've had 12. I've been assigned to projects with 12 different project managers. That's not more than like 1 or 2 per product manager. And this doesn't even count ones that I haven't been assigned to, that I've interacted with but haven't been assigned to projects with. So I say that because it really, being able to adapt to your team changing all the time, the projects, the hierarchy, the circumstances, the goals, means really effectively functioning in those 3 primary roles as a designer and doing so through good communication. So I've seen some things. Good communication, hygiene, I would say, let's call it that, is key, I think, to making this work. So let's talk about just a couple of pro tips, right? Case study conference for doing this in just like the best way you can. So first of all, keeping teammates up to date. That's cool, isn't that cool? Okay. Keeping teammates up to date. Time for audience participation, everyone. All right, just to set a base level, give me a clap if you're a designer. Okay. Cool, so that's if everyone claps, every designer. Now, if you're a designer, let's say you were at work right now. Clap if your team knows exactly what you're working on. Pretty good, a little hesitant. Now, clap if there's a place your team can go right now to see the actual latest design of your project and understand them. Not bad, that one's usually a lot less loud. Now, clap if there are, let's say, design decisions that you've made in your head or that conclusions you've come to with your team that are not reflected in that place yet. So that one was kind of opposite. Probably not a lot of people should have clapped for that, and those people also clapped for the last one. So, something's going on here. Now, one last one. Clap if your team knows what you're going to be exploring next and in what order, and when it will probably arrive, or when you'll check in on it. Yeah, designers, great at telling you when stuff's going to be done, right? It turns out this is something product managers care about. So, so you want to be an effective communicator at work and get your stuff done, you have to worry about this stuff. So, practical pro tip, get it in writing. Have this place that you have an overview where everyone can see what's up. So have some sort of artifact. Doesn't really matter what it is as long as you're actively working on it, keeping it up to date, but you're iterating on its format so that it's suited to your team, your particular team's makeup. So you've got to know, like, people want to know what the status is, when you're going to check in, what's likely to change, what isn't likely to change. Is there a big review coming that's likely to change? The feedback is likely to throw everything off the rails. Can you really say it's a final design before showing it to the boss? Maybe not. So an example, we have a design index document, we call it, at Slack, and it'll have things like project name and 2-sentence overview at the top, involved people, team, points of contact, the channel, remaining design tasks, the fully enumerated set of UI surface area changes, okay, and our estimate, or the status on it, plus an estimate on when we think we'll get to it. Now, this isn't like 7 months out. We're talking a couple weeks. All right? And of course, when you start doing this, you're going to be terrible at these estimates, but it quickly gets better. And it turns out that your product manager usually doesn't want to see the final thing as much as they want to have an idea when it'll land and that you're making progress, which is kind of an interesting hack about improving that relationship. So these indexes also have the overview of the latest preferred designs, our favorite, not necessarily the last one we've made, but the one that we think works best, and links to expirations, source files, that kind of thing. Everything you need in a digestible format. If people aren't using it, if they're not looking at it, if it's not understandable, it's time to iterate, try something else. Maybe make it 2 levels deep, link out. That's what we're doing. Now, another pro tip, don't make repeat mistakes, okay? Let me go back on this one a little bit. What I mean is set up habits that will decrease the rate of communication failure and the burden on this kind of impromptu spoken word situation and transferring important information about your project. So what I mean is always make better mistakes every time. Apply this design process to your design process, to the way you're talking about it. The way that this kind of manifests itself for me and at Slack, well, for me in particular, it's with simple checklists. Oh, not too bad. You forget to do something you should have done that you knew you had to do, and as a result, things didn't go as well. That's an item that goes on the list. It doesn't have to be super, super comprehensive and detailed, but a good set of these things can really help you kind of handle every situation without making the same mistakes you did last time. So I've got a bunch of these, but this is just what I look at in the morning because I love to jump right into work and just, whatever was in my brain at 6 p.m. the last, when I left the night before, the morning I get in and I just want to dive right into that. But I make myself look at this, and usually there's like, oh, wait, I need to, this is the stuff that's really important. It only takes a couple minutes to do, and then boom, I'm back into it. My PM's up to date. I know what's next. I realize that I have 3 overlapping meetings, that kind of stuff. And on the sort of the group level, the design team habits, we have weekly critiques where we present to each other, but also to higher-ups, the creative director of product, our head of design. And these are a little bit more sort of polished presentations where what we're presenting is a little bit more final. But we also have weekly studio time. So every week, 2 hours on Friday, all of the platform designers, I'm one of 3 on that group right now, we get together, we work through or talk about whatever problems we have. But we're actually also, with a sort of kind of a bi-weekly, monthly cadence, we talk about process. Sometimes we invite engineering managers, product managers to talk about what's going well with the design team, what isn't. And this has been very nice, actually. This is us during one of them. Wow. Anyway. So we also have retrospectives after every project, making sure that, hey, what happened that we could have avoided this time that we're going to avoid next time? It's not about not making mistakes, because your creative process is inherently messy. But the mistakes you shouldn't be making aren't, oh, I forgot to tell someone about this, right? There should be like, oh, we tried this solution, we thought it would work, and it didn't when we got to sort of the user experience, right? And the last thing, always be getting feedback. Now, you're going to think, oh, yeah, share early and often. That's true, and you should be doing that. you might be talking about it more than you're actually doing it. But I'm actually talking about feedback for yourself as a designer on how you're doing your job, on how you're communicating with the rest of your team. Because this is the kind of thing that'll allow you to build leverage, to influence your team, to lead them in, a direction where the business does better because you're there. So, pro tips on this. Setting the stage for feedback. How many of you have sat down with a product manager, raise your hands here, and asked them what they think their job is? How many of you have sat down with a product manager and told them what you think your job is? Okay, I promise you that if you do this, you will be surprised by the answers. Both of you will be surprised during this conversation. And having 12 plus product managers so far, every single one, CEO of the product, data, blah, 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 strategy, the user experience, all of them different. Okay? And how you're effectively communicating with them and facilitating your specific team setup depends on knowing these details about how people work and what they expect from you. So getting this, part of getting this feedback means setting the kind of the baseline. And do it before it's too late, okay? Interpersonal communication problems especially never seem as urgent as, say, the design that's due tomorrow. So you've really got to push on extracting this feedback about how you're doing often, and it's up to you to do it because it won't come to you. You won't get it until it's too late. This has happened to me a couple times where I hear feedback that I could have acted on after I'm with a new product manager and with a new project, and I should have gone and pulled that feedback first so that I could, fix it in time, right? None of the feedback that you get on, say, a quarterly review cycle should be a surprise to you. You should know what every member of your team is going to say about working with design. And respond with action. This is really what builds a lot of kind of, one-to-one kind of rapport, I think. That when you take your feedback, and it's not you follow it to the letter, you show them, hey, this is what I understood, this is what I'm going to do as a result, this is what changed. So, the big recap, folks. Quality final output demands leadership as a designer, and that requires effective communication. I think this is also true for a PM. You're just going to be doing different activities, functioning in a slightly different set of roles. And as a designer, you can help your team make better decisions faster by being a facilitator, a steward, a connoisseur. Helping other people transmit their ideas, spreading that user perspective and the creative process, and elevating your team's taste, helping them understand what's good, what's bad, what's why, what the team's values are, and how that perspective should influence design. And a few good, simple habits that you just try to go back to and always do help you avoid mistakes, and they help designers communicate well to successfully kind of take on those roles and make it happen. One last thing. This is an aside, because that was the meat of the presentation. This is the last little bit. Creation is not neutral. The choices that we make as creators matter, because designs are never neutral. Everything that we make says something about us. It says something about the culture that it came from. It changes the world for other people. It might change their behavior as well. We might not be affected immediately by it, but the people who come after us will see it as normal. So it's up to us to design systems with stronger values. And you might think, oh no, I'm making something that's neutral. Like, doesn't really have this kind of, it's not transmitting my values, right? Or maybe you might think of a road. This is an example I cribbed from Eric Meyer's XOXO talk. I love it. You might think, hey, a road, that's neutral, right? It's just a surface. You make it, and then people can drive whatever they want over it to wherever they want to for whatever purpose. You don't control that. It's like a platform. But There's plenty of not neutral things about a road, that it was made or funded at all, where it goes from, where it goes to, where it passes by, the traffic rules and regulations on the road. So something that might seem neutral, like this, actually isn't. So it's up to us as creators to make sure we're doing the right thing. Because if we do something that's unethical or that's not as sort of enabling as it could be for other people, that's not as inclusive as it could be, it will likely be not through malicious intent, but because we missed an opportunity to act. So be very mindful of the things you make, because it's up to us to make sure that we're building for the future that we want to see. Thank you.